Hello, my name is Yu Tao. I will talk about why GDP is bad and the shortcomings of GDP. First, the exclusion of non-market transactions. Non-marketable goods and services do not involve market transactions, such as babysitting, house cleaning, lawn mowing, etc. Some very useful output is excluded because it is unpaid employment. Second, the failure to account for or represent the degree of income inequality in society. GDP per capita is just an average. It does not tell you the whole story. Most likely, it's the inequality in terms of income, which means high-income earners are getting richer by a large margin compared to lower-income earners. And the GDP does not measure improvement of quality of output. GDP is just a quantitative measurement, not a qualitative. It fails to measure the quality, improvement of goods and services. A phone today for the same price is not the same as a phone 10 years ago. This is very observable, especially in the technology sector, among many sectors which experience significant advancement. And GDP also does not take the environment into consideration. GDP does not measure negative or positive effects of output created in the process of production. I think that's all for the shortcomings of GDP.
So, what is SEDA? SEDA is a tool which allows countries to dig deeper into their overall social and economic conditions. It is a composite index which uses various different perspectives and matrices to evaluate the social and economic conditions of countries. This will allow more complex analysis to be done as each countries are different and each problem can be very difficult to be solved. When it comes to the SEDA matrices, it consists of 10 dimensions which are grouped into 3 different categories. The first one is economics. It consists of income, economic stability, as well as employment. When it comes to sustainability, it includes equality, civil society, governance, as well as environment. And lastly, investment, which includes education, health, and infrastructure. This is more sophisticated as compared to GDP. So, why SEDA is better than GDP? SEDA does aggregate the score based on the 10 dimensions which can be used to compare between different countries. It examines countries' ability to convert their wealth into well-being. Unlike GDP, GDP only measures the production of a country, which does not take into account the well-being aspect of a country. It also simplifies the assessment into one aggregate value to present complex multi-dimensional problems as different countries have different set of complex problems. And it is very essential to run complex comparison to different dimensions. Thus, this would provide more meaningful information and can be used by governments and policymakers to make appropriate decisions. Moreover, this would significantly improve the engagement with the public and solve different complex problems, socially and economically.
Hi there, my name is Eti and let's look at the application and benefits of SEDA. To obtain a SEDA score, an evaluation of the aggregation for the 10 SEDA dimensions is done, providing an overall current level score for each country. This score will then be used to compare between countries. Generally, a wealthier country will have a higher SEDA score compared to a less wealthy country. With insights given by these 10 SEDA dimensions, governments can identify economic issues more specifically and design strategies to overcome pressuring issues. By using SEDA scores, we are able to examine how good are countries at converting wealth to well-being. This is done by using the wealth to well-being coefficient where a country's SEDA score is compared with a country's GNI, which is also known as gross national income per capita. On the other hand, GDP per capita uses the market value of all finished goods and services produced within a country, usually in a year. Then the amount of wealth is then divided among a certain country's population to obtain a GDP per capita value. countries that focus on vitalizing well-being will be able to raise the living standards of their citizens and set the country up for stronger and more resilient economic growth. For example, Norway has achieved the highest SEDA ranking in 2018, which is shown by the Boston Consulting Group, where the country showed highly convincing statistics, especially in terms of investments. The country has strong performance in taking its wealth and converting it into well-being. After seeing how efficient SEDA is, it is definitely an option to consider over GDP per capita, as it truly measures the well-being of all citizens and convert it into a value that is used to better a country's economy.
We can say that every country is unique, as they're handling with different economic issues. Though GDP has helped economists to determine whether the economy is growing or having recession, relying on GDP only is not an advisable way to run countries, as it has shortcomings to it. SEDA, in the other hand, has 10 dimensions to aggregate the scores of countries for the sake of comparing. Generally, a wealthy country will have higher SEDA score, as they are able to convert their wealth to well-being of the citizens. By using wealth to well-being coefficient, where a country's SEDA score is compared with a country's gross national income per capita, we get to examine how good is the country in converting wealth to well-being. Therefore, we can conclude that countries that focus more on having higher SEDA score will eventually increase the living standards of their citizens and make their country best in achieving economic growth. That is why SEDA, or better known as Sustainable Economic Development Assessment, is better than GDP.